What's a really awkward situation that everyone can relate with? When you try to contribute to a conversation and someone cuts you off multiple times. And you patiently wait for your turn to speak, even though it already was, but by the time the air is clear, the subject has already changed and what you were going to say is now irrelevant. I used to be a habitual cutter-offer when I was younger. I wasn't trying to be rude, I was just excited for what I had to say. I've reformed that behavior now, but if I notice this happening to someone else, I'll make sure to call attention to the person trying to talk. "What was that, John?" Or something along those lines to make sure everyone is heard. When you think someone waves at you, so you wave back, but they were waving at someone behind you. Not long ago at church we were asked to turn and greet people. I turned around and the guy said hi to me, and stuck his hand out to shake. I went for it and realized he was talking to the woman beside me. She and I both ended up with a hand in his hand at the same time trying to shake it. They both looked at me and I quickly turned around and pretended it didn't happen, which made it more awkward. And then rest of the service I couldn't stop laughing about it. This is standard for me. When you're saying goodbye to someone, and then you both end up walking in the same direction. Or when you turn and walk into a wall with people watching. Edit, my first awards ever. So glad my forms of awkwardness resonate with others. Also, when you realize you've forgotten something and need to turn around, but you don't want to just turn around abruptly because that would make you look insane. So you do a little performance where you get your phone out, pretend to check a message, sort of mime aha. And then turn around. Or cross the street and then turn around to throw any observers off the scent. Visited my aunt and uncle 7 years ago, and we were hanging out watching TV. My uncle clicks through channels and stops on Harold and Kumar Escape from Guantanamo Bay. Within minutes it's the shaved pussy party scene. My aunt and uncle sit there in silence watching, not saying anything until the scene is over while I sweat bullets. If you put an acorn between my butt cheeks I could have cracked it. A few months ago I visit again. Uncle flips through channels. It's Starship Troopers. Within minutes it's a sex scene and the boobies are out. I'm not visiting anymore. Being called on to answer a question you really have no idea how to answer. I used to just say I don't know. Can't speak for you, but whenever I said I don't know, my teachers would go on a rant and say something like, "Why don't you know? You should know," or the old classic, "At least try." And then when I try, I say something stupid and everyone starts laughing and the teacher says that's not right. God bless, I'm not in school anymore. When you've had multiple interactions with someone but you can't remember their name, but it's gone too far to admit you've forgotten it, so you just have to call them love or mate forever. I met this guy in my math class at the beginning of the semester and I never caught his name. We became friends and now it's the end of the semester and I still don't know his name. Not sure how to ask. Edit, well, I now have been given about 150 ways to get their name without directly asking. Thanks for the help and please quit destroying my inbox. Watching a totally normal movie sitting alone, and a split second before your parents walk in they start fucking. The worst part is deciding whether to jump for the remote or play it cool. Hint, never play it cool. Like Schrodinger's cat, it decided to become a NC-17 movie the minute you made that decision. That walk down a long hallway toward each other where you've clearly seen the other person, but they're too far away to say something, so you do the awkward look around until you get close enough to say hey and keep walking. Edit, thanks. I work in an office above a warehouse and the hallway goes the length of the entire warehouse. It's like that never-ending hotel hallway in The Shining. There are departments all along the hallway so people come out of doors from each end. It's the worst, to start walking from one end and someone comes out from a door at the other and I'm just praying inside they enter into another door before we get to each other. But it never happens. We always end up crossing paths, but until that point, I'm looking everywhere but at that person. Looking into other offices, pulling my phone out for no reason to look at it. The only savior is when you have a box or paperwork in your hands that you can focus on, and then when the other person is within 5 feet of you, say hey and keep walking. It's utter misery every time I have to go into the hallway. Which is a lot. When you reply to a stranger who says hello, but then realize they were on the phone and not speaking to you. Happened to me just yesterday and I didn't get any sleep last night as I couldn't stop reliving the moment. AirPods have made this one so much more common, it's really annoying, especially if you work in retail. I used to go to college with a girl who got the same train home as me, and we would always walk to the train station together chatting. But as soon as we sat down on the train she would call one of her friends without warning and start talking to them on hands-free, so I always, every single time, thought she was talking to me and I'd reply, and she'd ignore me. Cringe every day. Even worse, when a coworker spots you in a store and starts talking to you, but you don't recognize who they are because you're not used to seeing them outside of work. You don't want to ask them who they are because then you'd look like a fool, so you need to pretend to know who they are during the entire conversation. Not being able to pick up when someone else is completely disinterested in what you are talking about. Picking up on everyone being disinterested in what you're saying and you're totally bungling the story the longer it goes on as their disinterest rises and you're desperately trying to keep the narrative ball in the air and you know it's all falling apart but your dumb fuck mouth just keeps talking as your dying dignity screams at you to shut the fuck up. When you're finishing up at the checkout and the cashier puts the notes on top of the receipt and then coins on top of that. Then the next person steps up and you're fumbling, trying to disassemble the stack in your hand, gather your shopping, say thanks and move away at the same time. In the UK it's extra sucky because you bag your groceries yourself. If you aren't quick enough you have to do all of what you mentioned as well as quickly finish the packing while everyone stares at you waiting for you to hurry. This is a weirdly regional thing in the US. Grew up in CA. Every grocery store had workers specifically dedicated to bagging so that every checkout lane had a teller and a bagger so the customer just had to stand there and pay. Moved to the East Coast and the separate position of bagger doesn't really exist here. Sometimes I've seen workers do it if it's very busy, but most of the time either the customer does it or the teller will do both jobs while everyone in line behind the lazy a-hole who doesn't bag their own groceries grumbles about how long it's taking. When you say a funny joke, but all you get is silence. I told a complete, long story to a big group of near strangers and received complete silence. I still cringe about that. It was a pretty good lesson. A new group of people are not your old group of friends. They don't know you and you don't know their humor yet. I give tours in a cavern and sprinkle puns and jokes in with the information. Normally. Great reactions. This tour. Not a single laugh. I think one person may have cracked a smile. But the rest were just staring at me. I actually said, "Come on, just give me a laugh every now and then or this is gonna be awkward," as that usually breaks the ice or whatever and fixes the problem. One person snickered. The rest stared. It was a 70-minute tour, y'all. 70 minutes of nearly zero laughter. When the person says no when you asked them out. Edit, thanks everyone for the responses. My response really just meant it's awkward because either you and or the other person might feel awkward when it happens. Things can, obviously, be fine after. Just right when it happens it can be odd. When you're next in line at the grocery store with your mom and she leaves you to just get one more thing and the anxiety and awkwardness builds because you're up and she's nowhere to be found. That'll be €105.68, cash or credit card. Mom is at the very end of the supermarket, hesitating between two different shampoo bottles. Should she take the one that prevent greasy hair or the one that prevent dry hair? She'll never know. // You ever clogged a toilet in somewhere that wasn't your house? Thank guys, my inbox is now clogged with all of your oversized shit stories. Can't wait to binge read all of it. Edit 2. Guys, please stop sending stories. I don't think my inbox could survive more of this. It's on intense medication. RN. Edit 3, inbox funeral later at 3 p.m. Y'all are invited. Can't remember who told me this, but I'll never forget the story. A woman on a meet the parents visit to her boyfriend's parents' house, just before they got engaged. She took a massive dump, a family trait apparently, that just would not go down. Parents had weak water pressure. She refused to leave that giant turd floating, so she extracted it, wrapped it in TP, tossed it out the window, and snuck out later to whip it. Can you imagine the extended panic as she carried out that hours-long operation? Having your stomach rumble in the middle of a quiet class/meeting. Edit, both in college and at store meetings my go-to cover-up strategy was to furiously flip through pages of notes to try and drown it out. When I feel anxious, my stomach rumbles uncontrollably. Several times per minute, even. This started to be a problem in school because it would rumble constantly throughout exams, and was super embarrassing. But soon enough, any time I was in a quiet public situation, I'd be dreading my stomach rumbling, and that anxiety would cause it to rumble. This went on for probably around 5 years, and it was hell for me. I used to try so many techniques to suppress the rumbles. Eventually, I figured out it was anxiety related and that I was unknowingly causing my own stomach to rumble uncontrollably by making myself anxious about it rumbling. Since then, it's been a lot easier to manage. I just focus on my breathing and try to break the cycle by not thinking about it. This one goes out to the girls who didn't have a lot of powerful uplifting women in their lives, but the first time a girl has to buy pads/tampons, it's really awkward, like you're letting the whole world know your baby maker is working. I know I was 10 and I had to do this. I was so terrified/weirded out, I thought everyone was watching me. When the server brings your food and says enjoy your food and starts walking away and you say back, you too. I'm a server. If it makes you feel any better, I've said have a nice day guys instead of enjoy your meal more often than I'd like to admit. I think it comes from me trying to not use the same phrase for every table. I hate the idea of saying something to one table then them overhearing me say the same thing, word for word to the table next to them. Basically I'm trying to make the service a little more personal, but it occasionally makes me do dumb shit like that. Being expected to make polite conversation while having a gynecological exam. There you are, pussy exposed, legs spread wide, someone is stuffing something up your vagina, and you are expected to be able to talk about the weather. I'm not a woman, but I suppose the poor doc is just trying to make things less awkward, but unintentionally makes things more awkward. Edit, if it makes you feel any better, they do far worse things to you after you're dead, and the weather conversation doesn't even include you. How rude. When you swallow water wrong and it turns to a coughing fit in 2020. Dude? Yesterday in the grocery store I accidentally swallowed my own spit wrong. Just so random, out of nowhere choking and then of course coughing. Like, a shit ton of coughing. My boyfriend was freaking out on me that everyone was gonna be mad at us / make us leave. Nothing happened, but I've never felt like such a criminal before. I made sure to say I just choked on my own spit really loud. Which, also didn't make me feel great. I once had a delivery person who I swear used to actively pick me to deliver to. He would always make awkward conversation while I was stood there, uncomfortably clutching my food. Once, my housemate opened the door instead of me for another food delivery and guess who it was? I have never seen someone look so disappointed. His face fell. Quickly, he spotted me on the sofa and immediately his face lit up, and waved hello. We had a good laugh after when we closed the door. Slapping a stranger's ass in the grocery store and realizing it's not your significant other. Once, after really only spending time with my boyfriend, I went to the grocery store with my sister. She reached down for a chocolate bar, and out of instinct I tapped her butt. Realized my mistake after the motion had started, but before contact, too late though. So I then whopped her a few more times around her thigh, back area while looking around like I had no idea this interaction was taking place. Edit, thank you for the award, kind stranger. My very first. When you're having a conversation with someone and you don't hear what they say so you ask them to repeat and they do. But you still don't hear it and ask them to repeat again and they do. And you still don't know what they said. Do you ask them to repeat again, and maybe still not hear it? Pretend you heard it, nod your head and hope it's an appropriate response. Stab yourself in the eye with a pen to create a diversion and change the subject. Happens to me all the time. I think I have bad hearing maybe. Sometimes I think I have dyslexia of the ears. It's called auditory processing disorder, I always say huh. Just as I've figured out what they said skeptical. I've got the APD. I was diagnosed as an adult in my 30s. In a way it was such a relief because I knew I wasn't hard of hearing and it's made me more patient with myself. It's such an abstract concept to people that don't have it that I've only told my closest friends and colleagues. I tell other people I'm a little bit hard of hearing and they are much more patient with my continual asking them to repeat themselves, although I've had a few colleagues get really annoyed and ask, can't you just get hearing aids or something? Dude, I understand it's frustrating for you, but guaranteed it's 1,000 times more frustrating for me.